Ding dong, the witch is dead. Saint Garling Saturn of the Gorosei is no more. Imu has made the executive decision to erase that loser from existence before he could even get home to plead his case. And now, with the fall of a Gorosei member comes the rise of another one. Saint Garling Figarland has aptly been anointed as the new warrior god of scientific defense in light of Saturn's departure. What the hell is going on, and what could this mean moving forward? So I think it's pretty clear how awful Saturn's track record has been thus far. Egghead Island and Vegapunk were his responsibility, and everything just kept on falling apart for him as the arc progressed. Vegapunk studied the Void Century. Bonnie ended up getting higher pacifista authority than him. He experimented on Bonnie, which also got her a mimic version of Sun God Nika's powers. Catarina Devon managed to fondle him. Vegapunk was able to get 90% of his message out to the world. They lost Punk records after there were no more combatants on the island. And then, for the most egregious mistake in Imu's eyes, was that Saturn let Joy Boy escape. While there were other Gorosei members on the island as well that could also be held responsible, it was Saturn's job at the end of the day to oversee this entire operation from the start. Saturn came to set things straight on the island, but instead, he just got bent over and spanked. Saturn did not have a single feat that you could really look back at and say, wow, that dude's packing something heavy. He is what most people would call a regeneration merchant. That was the only thing he was providing in battle. His poisonous grippers never touched anyone. His immobilization worked, but then he stopped using it. He lost limbs when buildings fell on him, and his eye explosion powers only work on those considerably weaker than him. While Saturn still stands stronger than a majority of the verse, he simply could not hang with the big dogs. Imu getting rid of such a glaring weakness within his ranks just makes logical sense. But how was Imu able to set Saturn ablaze from such a far distance? I believe this goes all the way back to the theory that none of the Gorosei have actual devil fruits. Time and time again in the series, when a new character is introduced, we usually learn what devil fruits they hold the powers of. But for the Gorosei, we didn't learn that. Instead, for the first time ever, Oda only gave us the name of their transformations without the distinguishing Zoan model. That was the first hint that perhaps something more was at play when it came to their unique regenerative forms. I believe they are in fact connected to Imu, and that Imu is the one who granted them these transformations. When you think back to everything we've seen regarding the Celestial Dragons, they have shown that they really don't care to eat devil fruits themselves. Instead, they seemingly use them on their slaves as a form of entertainment. Boa Hancock and her sisters are prime examples of this. Their disdain for devil fruits falls in line with their mindset of being gods. The theme of gods versus devils is quite apparent here. So if the Celestial Dragons are not fond of devil fruit transformations, then it only makes sense if they had godly transformations that could equal that of devil fruits in combat. I would like to think that these powers are bestowed upon them by Imu, and if they were given to them by Imu, they can be taken and manipulated by him as well. In this chapter, Imu's powers might even extend farther than we thought possible. We saw that Saturn was actually present at Marie-Jean 200 years ago when Emeth first attacked the Holy Land. Either Saturn is on the same diet as Dr. Kureha, or he is simply immortal thanks to Imu. If the Egghead incident never went down, there's a chance that Saturn would have continued to exist among us forever. But that isn't the outcome here. Imu, instead, was so displeased with Saturn's performance here that he revoked his powers and used their connection to end their life. But now that that has happened, what is to become of Garling? So this ties back to another video where I talked about the Holy Knights, most notably Garling, all having god transformations, which in reality would turn out to be all mythological monsters just like the Gorosei. Well, that was all speculation at the time. This might actually become true with Garling becoming a part of the Gorosei. If he didn't have a transformation beforehand, he certainly will now. The real question becomes, what will Garling turn into? The Itsumare, Bokotsu, and Gyuki are part of Japanese mythology. The Hoki is of Chinese legend. And then there's the Sandworm, which originates from Western fantasy. I have seen some pushback saying Jupiter is actually based on the Mongolian Deathworm, but why not call him a Deathworm then, instead of naming his form after another fictitious creature? Sandworms in fantasy and Deathworms have different origins and have different abilities across the board. Either way, it's a moot point, since what I'm trying to get across here is that the Gorosei transformations do not follow only one part of the world's mythos. Instead, it seems all-encompassing. So Garling's transformation could originate from anywhere, which now leads us to the meat of this theory. And that is that I believe Garling will be granted a werewolf-lycanthrope transformation. I'll provide a few reasons as to why this may be, but first, let's start with his hair. His hair resembles that of a crescent moon currently. and when his hair is fully grown out, it becomes a full moon as depicted by Oda in SBS 108. That could have been a subtle hint at his werewolf form, since that is what commonly triggers the transformation in many movies. This moon haircut also blends nicely with his Gorosei promotion, since the Gorosei all have names that relate to planets in the solar system, so Garling being moon-related works on this front as well, since it is a satellite planet that exists within the solar system. Garling's current hair, being that of a crescent moon, could also be a reference to Mikazuki Kamen, which translates to Crescent Moon Mask. This character exists within the first iteration of the Japanese superhero television show called Himitsu Sentai Gorenger, which is more commonly known around the world as the Power Rangers. Crescent Moon Mask is a villain that first appears in episode 7 and sported infinite regeneration powers as well as the ability to transform people into werewolves. Pretty random for a villain in my opinion, but yes, perhaps this is another reason why Oda decided to give Garling the hair he has today, because he was inspired by the Power Rangers villain. And hey, Oda has referenced the Power Rangers before with the introduction of the Vinsmoke siblings, so a villain inspired from that same series is quite possible. Another thing about Garling being a werewolf or lycanthrope that is quite interesting would be his connection to Jupiter. In chapter 1125, Jupiter seemed the most shocked and almost terrified when Garling declared himself as the new god warrior of scientific defense. There's a chance that they may perhaps have some bad blood. This is notable if this lycanthrope theory comes true, since, in mythology, the Roman god Jupiter is the one who actually turned King Lycaon into the first werewolf. The reasoning was because Lycaon killed Jupiter's son and fed him to the god in a twisted test. Apologies if I pronounce his name wrong, I just don't know how to. But Jupiter then cursed Lycaon and made him wander the earth as a werewolf. This whole story doesn't have to become true, but it just shows that even in Greek-Roman mythology, werewolves and Jupiter just don't get along. Next, I'd like to turn to his name, Garling. There are many different routes we can go when explaining his name, but someone pointed out to me that his name does sound quite similar to garlic. This observation could be a play on the classic tiff between werewolves and vampires. If Garling is indeed a werewolf, then there's a chance that a vampire exists within the Holy Knights as well. The existence of a vampiric figure could have been hinted at a few times throughout the series. The first hint would be in the form of the world government's carrier bats. These bats are used by the world government in order to transport important letters such as Shishibukai offers, and maybe even Garling's promotion letter. We know that Morgans controls the birds of the world, so if that's the case, then it's only logical to assume that someone is controlling the bats at the behest of the world government. The next hint at vampires could have been with the introduction of Stussy. This is another transformation that we saw here on Egghead Island that was lacking a Zoan descriptor, just like the Gorosei. So what are her bat-like powers exactly? While there is a chance that Vegapunk simply modified her and gave her the vampiric appearance and abilities, it is still unconfirmed. So, with that being open-ended, there does exist a reality where she was turned into a vampire by a celestial dragon. Another nod to the existence of a vampire is the fact that in Kuma's flashback, the kids of Sorbet Kingdom called Bonnie a vampire because she couldn't go out into the sunlight due to her illness. We don't know who among the celestial dragons fathered Bonnie, so perhaps her dad ends up having the vampire transformation we're talking about. Or it could simply be ironic, since in the gender-bent versions of the supernova that Oda drew in an SBS, she actually looked reminiscent of Shanks. I call it ironic because Shanks' main rival in the series is Dracul Mihawk, who definitely has vampire references littered in his personality and character. Mihawk's origin is still unknown to this day, but the common theory is that he was another abandoned celestial child due to his line about hunting rabbits, which is in opposition of the God Valley hunt. And not to mention, but this theory is further pushed upwards due to the fact that he has an attack called the 16 Holy Moons, which follows the theme of celestial dragons being tied to the number 16. Just like how Luffy's Go Mu means the number 5-6 when broken down, Emu means 1-6 when broken down. The celestial dragons, when executing people, shoot them 16 times. The Oxloid bell gets rung 16 times as per tradition. Doflamingo, another celestial dragon, also uses a finisher move called the 16 Holy Bullets. And to top it all off, there are 16 key members within the world government's fighting force, 1 being Imu, 6 being the Gorosei including Garling, and then there's the final 9 of them being the Holy Knight silhouettes Dragon gave us, which all totals up and equals out to 16. What I love most about bringing Mihawk into the equation is that it would be a great cannon fodder fight for him before his eventual fight and loss at the hands of Zoro. Right now, Mihawk doesn't have any feats aside from his title, so giving him a nice Holy Knight matchup, whom he is related to, could be just what the doctor ordered. The last thing I want to mention regarding Mihawk is that his name Dracul is a reference to Dracula, which when translated means the son of the devil, but also the son of the dragon. Mihawk has a high chance of being the son of a celestial dragon, and perhaps they are the one who has the vampiric transformation. The reason I threw in the possible vampire Holy Knight is because their existence would be a great way to tie in multiple theories into one cohesive thought, since werewolves and vampires are often depicted together. Back to Garling though, the last bit of potential foreshadowing I want to point out is the existence of Tequila Wolf and the newfound existence of Vodka Wolf, Rum Wolf, and Bourbon Wolf. The world government 700 years ago made the decision to start constructing these bridges to connect multiple islands together. Not much else is known about it outside of that. But what if the originators of these bridges were the Figarland family? If the Figarland family is tied to this project in some manner, then them all sharing the name Wolf would be a nod at this transformation. I'm not too sure if this means that there was another werewolf transformation 700 years ago, but that wouldn't be too shocking to imagine. Now that Saturn is gone, his title of Warrior God of Scientific Defense got passed down to Garling. For Saturn, this title made some sense since he is the one who experimented on Bonnie, and was in charge of keeping tabs on Vegapunk. But for Garling though, not much is known about him, but if he's anything like his relative Shanks, then it doesn't seem like he'll contribute much to the scientific field of the Holy Land. While yes, Imu gave him the task of overlooking York, that might just be where the buck stops when it comes to his scientific ventures. Which now makes me wonder, why did Imu pass down the title instead of simply making one specific for Garling? Does Imu want to keep this title in circulation for some reason? There are many theories that Imu is immortal. I for one am a solid believer of that. So maybe there's a chance that back 900 years ago, the original Gorosei consisted of people who befit all of these titles: Warrior God of Scientific Defense, Justice, Agriculture, Environment, and Finance. One thing you may notice is that none of these titles, if taken literally, should belong to evil people. This could further the notion that when the world government first took over, that maybe they weren't truly evil, and just got corrupted over time by new members and ideals, which often seems to be true for most nations and countries in the real world. Imu could be sentimental about these titles since it could remind him of the originators. Another question that is posed by Garling's rise into the Gorosei is what number will he obtain? We're unsure about what the numbers on their summoning circles mean, but now that Garling will most likely receive this power, we are now one step closer to uncovering this truth. Saturn held the number 5 among the group, while Jupiter held the number 1. This number could be referring to the order joined, power level, or even authority. And then, moving past that, would Garling receive the same immortality that Saturn and the other Gorosei seemingly possess? It'll be interesting to see if this was due to Imu's powers or if there's a certain ritual that he must go through to get it. I believe there's a chance that it is due to Imu's abilities and not true immortality. Just like how there are theories that multiple people will obtain portions of Luffy's Sun God powers, I believe that Imu could be doing the same thing here with the Gorosei. We saw that when Imu executed Saturn, he erupted into black flames. This could be a direct parallel to Luffy's white flames. The idea that we'll get more Sun God Nika-like powers could have been hinted at with the existence of Sulong form, which has white hair and red eyes. And then there were the energy steroids of Fishman Island that turned Hody's hair white and his eyes red, and could have even been hinted at with the Lunarians, since their main features are the white hair and flames. Imu's powers could be running parallel to all of this. If you want to hear more about my Moon God Imu theory, then feel free to check out my video which covers it, linked below. Also, even if this isn't black flames and it's just black magic, I think this parallel still works quite fine. One thing of note though, is that when Saturn perished, we actually saw 2 souls leave his body. This could represent Imu's ties to Saturn, or this could even represent the soul of the Gyuki, mixed with either Imu or Saturn. Another mystery that opens up with this development is in regards to the Holy Knights. Garling was the supreme commander of them. Now that he has risen the ranks, who will take his place? I believe it will fall onto the mysterious character we saw back in chapter 1121. Many speculate that this is another member of the Figarland family, since they share some similarities with Shanks, like the sword, the hair, and even the cloak. If this member is promoted to Supreme Commander, then this would make a lot of sense. Garling would simply be passing the baton down to another member of the Figarland family. Nepotism at its best. If the Holy Knights don't fill the empty position that this would create, then oddly enough, they'd have the exact same number of members as the Red Hair Pirates. Shanks maybe could square off against the Supreme Commander, and his 8 senior officers would face off against the 8 remaining Holy Knights. Just like Mihawk, many people wonder whom Shanks' crew will obtain feats against. So perhaps this is their destined matchup, if not against the Blackbeard Pirates. A key note that can be taken away from this chapter as well regarding the Holy Knights is that they 100% without a shadow of a doubt know about Imu's existence. Not much is known when it comes to who is privy to Imu's existence, but Garling, when promoted, says that he received a letter informing him of this promotion. Since the Gorosei were clueless about this development, the only person that could have sent it would be Imu. The Holy Knights being aware of Imu's existence might not seem that important at first, but if you want to make an argument that they were also bestowed powers by Imu, then this is what we've been waiting for. As far as the regular celestial dragons knowing about Imu, like Charlos for example, I don't know about that one yet. And now the last point to mention in this video is in regards to Catarina Devon. Now that Saturn has been eliminated from this corporeal dimension, how effective will Devon's transformation truly be? Well, it depends. We aren't exactly sure if the world government is going to print the headline that Saturn has perished, so if they don't disclose that information to the world, then Devon's transformation into Saturn could be quite effective against nations who do not know any better, which would be ironic. The world government, by suppressing information, could potentially set themselves up for harm. So yeah, it really depends on Imu's disposition on the matter. One thing is for sure though, if Devon tries to use this transformation in Marie Joie, she's going to get caught in a matter of seconds. Even before Saturn's death, many thought that her transformation would fall flat since all the Gorosei seemingly have telepathy. The minute Devon doesn't answer the phone call, she'd be cooked alive then and there. Whatever Blackbeard wanted this form for, it was definitely duplicitous in nature. Hopefully, Blackbeard has already accomplished his mission as the fake Saturn, or if he hasn't yet, let's hope the world government doesn't tell anybody that Saturn is actually dead. If you're rooting for Blackbeard, of course.